Welcome to episode 22 of the David Binkowski podcast. My guest today is Matt Haze.
Stop. Just slow it. Little coaching real quick. Slow it down a little bit. Welcome to the David Binkowski podcast. Because you went through that quick, give yourself a pause and then continue on with it. You got to just slow down a little bit.
Welcome to episode 22 of the David Binkowski podcast. My guest today is Matt Haze. He is at Matt Haze on Twitter if you want to give him a follow. And you may know him better as the voice of the 30 Rock Tree. You can also follow the tree on Twitter at 30 Rock Tree. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Mr. Binkowski, I am honored to be here. It's so great to chat with you.
No, it's wonderful to have you on. I appreciate you coming on. We're both from the Midwest, so we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But what I want to tell people and get to know you is more about your background and all the awesome things you're doing. So you are living like myself in Puerto Rico, except you're in the San Juan area, whereas I'm on the west side. So how in the heck did you end up in San Juan?
That's a great question. So yeah, I'm in the hearts of the old city, Old San Juan, Viejo San Juan. Moved here 2.5 years ago, end of December 2018, lived in Santurce for the first year and a half. And then in the middle of COVID, came over here and love being here in the old city. Long story short, originally from Cleveland, Ohio, started in the media and entertainment world as a radio personality when I was in high school. I used to volunteer at a local college station during the summer and ended up working a bunch of shifts. And then the college kids would come in and this high school kid was teaching college kids how to do radio. They're paying $30,000 a year to go to school and I'm getting paid nothing to teach them how to talk into a microphone. That shouldn't have happened that way. Started working in radio professionally in Cleveland and then moved to LA for a bit in the entertainment world. I did take a break bouncing around in radio, sold real estate for a minute, but then moved to LA, lived in outside of New York City in Weehawken, New Jersey for almost 10 years. Had to go back to Ohio. My father got sick and passed away. So I went home to help my mom and with the family for a bit. Didn't want to move right back to New York City. Most of my business had already moved digitally as it is. So I could have most of my friends in the city also had left and kind of became more digital nomads. And I kind of wanted to try that as well. And I didn't want to have to redo my social circles in the city. I spent 10 years building it. Didn't want to have to do it again. Went to London and Toronto a lot and on the West Coast. I thought I was going to move to London, honestly, when I started my journey, but came to Puerto Rico after a winter in London where it was just freezing cold, needed some warmth, and just walked around here and fell in love with the energy, the vibe, just saw so much potential. A friend of mine moved down here, and then I started to meet more people down here on trips, and just knowing where I wanted to go with my life and the next chapter. I wasn't planning that this would be home, but I knew that this is kind of where I wanted to be. I loved the idea of living in the Caribbean. I loved being part of this community and giving back to this island and wanting to be part of whatever this next chapter is and learn so much about the society and culture here and do what I can to help. And I fell in love with it and just said, let's do it.
It's a very, very common, or familiar to me at least, theme. You're in San Juan now. What are you doing in San Juan? Specifically, what are you doing here?
I'm sitting here having a cup of coffee chatting with you at this moment, if we want to get that specific. So I run a media and content production development and consultancy service based out of here. I do a mix. My company does a mix of everything from mostly focused though on podcast production, development, and consultancy for everyone. Our clients have varied from Emmy award-winning television hosts to 8-figure entrepreneurs, B2B, B2C, life coaches, a wide variety of different type of clients. I also, though, still am a comedian and radio personality by trade and still do a lot of online comedy and brand development as well for different brands, but also working on trying to find new ways to be able to develop my comedy and different ideas online. Being based here has really opened my eyes and ears and my brain to different ways of thinking, different ways of life, and just chatting with people in different ways and wanting to kind of take some of those thoughts and observations with people and find different unique ways to be able to develop fun content online and build something from that. So you kind of have a mix of the day job of the podcast and content production and doing some consultancy with that. And then as well, still doing my own fun comedy stuff as well.
So you mentioned that you're doing podcast production, and that is through your own website. So people, if you're interested in it, if you're listening to this and you're saying, well, I'm thinking about starting a podcast, or my company is thinking about starting a podcast, Matt's your guy. So again, check him out on Twitter at Matt Haze, and hit him up if you're interested in getting into podcasting. Now, going way back,
yeah,
you grew up in Cleveland. I'm going to assume, Cavs, Indians, Browns fan, growing up with those three teams, were the mainstay of part of, at least part of your Midwestern, upbringing, right?
Yeah, that's actually a little unique situation because I'm born in 82 and really came into loving sports in the 90s. So for me, it was more baseball than anything because the Browns went away in 94, 95, something like that. Mm-hmm. So, and my father was never, it was more of a passive thing, albeit in Cleveland, the Browns are the number one team. It is a blue collar city, deep in its heart. So Browns are number one, but I never grew up a Browns fan, which I'm lucky and blessed because I don't have that heartache that so many fans, in the city had for 20 something years. So I grew up more of a baseball fan and definitely grew up an Indians fan, a bit of a Cavs fan. But I love basketball, but never really grew up a Cavs fan as it is. And then when I left Cleveland, actually, I became a bit more annoyed by fellow Cleveland sports fans. And while I still pay attention to the Indians and all, when I moved to New York, I became more of a Mets fan. Going from, a Cleveland sports fan to a Mets fan, kind of, matching that misery kind of worked very well. It was a natural fit at that moment. So that worked out really well. But I still pay attention to the Indians a little bit. But I've never really talked about this. When I think it was late 2000s or early 2010s when they signed, what's his name for the New York Yankees? Swisher, Nick Swisher.
Yeah.
And that whole, I thought it was a great move by the Dolans at the time because they were spending money. This is great. You got not the biggest name, but a mid-sized name that can do some damage with a good bat. Great. Perfect for what the team was at that moment because they were kind of on the cusp of getting back into the playoffs again. But then I saw they were doing this big thing of Bro-hio about, Nick Swisher was this big bro and it was branded that way. And you have the guys with the aviator glasses wearing these t-shirts, acting like douchebags. And I was just so turned off by that. And it really made me realize what a lot of Cleveland sports fans are. It's a very passionate bunch, but there's a lot of douchebags in it. The same type of guys that will show up. And this happens at, I think, most opening days, MLB opening days around the country, but especially in Cleveland, you have the guys that show up because it's a national holiday. So They take the day off from work and you get drunk in, first week of April. It's always cold. So everybody's wearing winter jackets. So they're wearing Browns fans and pretending almost like it's a Browns game. Yeah, here we go, Brownies. Yeah, whatever. Just wanting to be the drunk assholes more than anything. And it just really kind of turned me off from Cleveland sports fans. And it just never really fell in love with it more after that.
Right. And so, coming from Detroit, this story sounds very familiar. We have the opening day stuff too, where it's like a holiday where people take the day off of work and they go get shit faced and then they get more shit faced downtown afterwards. And so I can completely relate to it. And obviously as a Lions fan, I feel your pain. So we've had a lot of years of losing. I've stuck with the Pistons. Obviously that's my team. I know the shit out of everybody, I'm sure, on Twitter with that, but I still like the Pistons. I like the rebuild and the way they're going, and I feel there's hope there. But similarly, when I moved from the Midwest to the New York City area, I got company tickets to a Mets game. The kids got Mets stuff because they really didn't know the Tigers that well. So any of their upbringing, they knew the Pistons because I watched the games and what have you. But it's pretty easy. Being in New York, hopping on a subway, going to a game and just getting involved and getting into it that way. So I completely understand it. Yeah.
And Citi Field is a gorgeous stadium. Gary, Keith, and Ron and SNY are just so much fun to watch. Just, that element of it does add to that. If anything, over the last few years, I've definitely gotten into more international soccer. Football. You have to get it correct. Yeah. But I've been kind of opening my eyes up a little bit to sports elsewhere besides just in the U.S. Also, American sports are very unique in that while the fans are passionate, so much of it is about money. When you see what just happened over in the UK and over in Europe about the Super League and a lot of the European teams, the big ones in Spain, Italy, and the UK trying to break off from the Champions League and try to create their own money league at that point. And you saw the uproar of European football fans standing up and was able to stop it. And even people on the, coaches and players on the inside standing up for that. That's not something you would ever see in the US. It would just be, we do it because, it's money and you have the best playing and it's all good. And, players might not like it, but they'll make a complaint or two and that's it. Where American sports is while the NFL is so unbelievably profitable and huge, but compared to, eyeballs and popularity, it's nothing compared to what football is in the other parts of the world. And so much now when you look at US sports, with the exception of maybe basketball has a lot of money, but basketball is very international compared to baseball or football, American football. There's just so much money involved. And when I see it from that standpoint, I sometimes look at the fans and go, you're passionate about it, but it's not the passion that you see, I think, internationally, especially when it comes to football fans or cricket fans, people that know the stats, they're the diehards, and it's about the sport itself, where so often the NFL fans, it's about Sunday afternoon sitting there getting drunk, not so much about the sport itself,
Right. Well, that explains why, people even show up to games like the Lions game or other teams that have not done anything. And I've actually asked this repeatedly of Knicks fans. And of course, this is the one year they can throw it back in my face this one year, but I'm like, I've coached kids who are, in high school and they're Knicks fans. And I'm like, how? Like, they're not good. Why would you? And so there's a lot of that kind of, we're just loyal to them because we're loyal to them kind of thing. Like you said, it's a ritual. It was passed down from my father or whomever. And it's just a thing we do. And I'm just like, I don't get it. Same
exact thing with Browns fans back in Cleveland. Like I said, I didn't have that bug in me, and I've been to one or two Browns games and I just wasn't comfortable. I did not like it. It was not my thing. Even though I'm from Cleveland, I don't feel a Clevelander anymore anyway. I've changed so much in the last 10 years that it doesn't feel like home when I go back. It's just a very different city and all. But over the last 20 years, I would see, friends of mine that are still diehard Browns fans, albeit, they made it to the playoffs, second, third round. They did rather well in the last year. They've turned it around. But for those really dark years, the 0-16 season and all, they would still go. And I go, why on earth would you give them your money? They're awful and they're not doing anything to get better. You get angry that they don't do anything to get better. Why would you continue to give them your money? Wouldn't you rather just burn your money and at least enjoy the fire? And at least there would be less misery at that point. Why would you do that? And I get it. Is that diehard? Is it passed down? Blah, blah, blah. But at some point you have to go, I can't keep doing this, you know?
Well, I got to the point with the Lions that I just straight up stopped watching altogether. And wow, my Sundays all of a sudden weren't so fucking miserable. And
it's amazing, isn't it?
Well, I'll give you an even worse one. Is every year as a family, an extended family, getting together on Thanksgiving to watch the Lions eat shit. And it's like, I feel terrible now. Why are we doing this? Like.
Yes.
So you get to a point.
It's tradition. It's tradition.
It's tradition that you feel like shit on Thanksgiving every year. So let's watch this game and watch a Hail Mary that beats us at the last second. So it just gets to the point. Also, you walk away because you're like, this is not a good experience.
It's also just very Midwest, and it's tradition is why we do it. That's a dumb, stupid, lazy excuse. Is this a tradition we should continue actually doing or not? Why do we do this family thing? It's tradition. Does anybody like it? No. Are we really going to look fondly back on this in 20 years? No, it's a waste of our time. Why do we do it? It's tradition. It's just such a cop-out on so many things instead of actually going, maybe it's okay to break the tradition and create something new.
Yep. Well, and this is also, this also goes to why we left. Let's be honest.
Yes. Very much so. Oh, yeah.
Concept of like, do we have to do that again? Like, we just did that. It was terrible. And now we're going to repeat it. Like, what are we doing? Oh my goodness.
It's the same thing when you like, we're both from there and often, from the Midwest, and we'll get those that shock of, why do you live in Puerto Rico? Why would you move away? Why did you do this? As if you can't, God forbid you break that tradition of just staying in the town that you grew up in and never leaving. I get it. That's part of that culture. That's how it is and all, but it's okay to break it. It's okay to try something different.
Well, you and I have both been back to the States since moving here, and especially once you spend some time here. Even my kids are like, I don't recognize this at all. Like, this is not, I don't like it. They just straight up say, I don't like being here. It's just not what I enjoy. I don't appreciate it, enjoy it. The traffic, all the things that they don't have to deal with here. So you and I both followed a similar path, a little different, but we both ended up in working in New York City. Yeah, I was recruited to work in several different markets at one point in my career, and chose New York City because I knew as a marketer, I could basically walk into any building and go up and down the elevator, hand out a resume, and get a job offer. That's just, coming from the Midwest and knowing what that's like to watch your economy tank and what have you. It was like, it seems like there's more opportunity there. I'm assuming you did it for a similar reason, which is just there's opportunity.
Yeah, LA was my first choice. So I left radio in the mid 2000s and sold real estate. I was dating someone at the time and thought we were going to get married. So let's settle down. And I kind of grew up as a real estate nerd. My father was a real estate nerd and kind of grew up around that. He should have been a real estate agent. And I actually tried to talk him into joining me and creating a team, but he did not want to do that. He was retired and done. And I wanted to get back in the entertainment world. Oh, she cheated on me. So I'm like, well, that's done. I want to get back in the entertainment world. And I wanted to do more comedy stuff. And I still am a big diehard David Letterman fan. I've studied him for many, many years. Midwest guy. I have very much a sarcastic, self-deprecating type sense of humor, similar to him. I'm the more the British element, sarcastic side than what he was. But love it. Anytime I see an interview still with him today, someone makes me laugh and love it. He just jumped in the car and went to LA. So I did that same exact thing. Went to LA, lasted 3 months because it was just a whole different vibe, animal, that my style. You would say, hey, I have this idea. And they go, that's great. You know what? We got a party in the hills tonight. Let's go there. We can chat about it. Maybe we can meet somebody. I'm like, no, I want to work. Let's make this happen. So I ran out. Also didn't find that much work, was doing some oddball extra stuff and all that, but just not my vibe. No, it doesn't fit me. And I ran out of money. So I moved to New York City, so cheaper compared to LA. I was already starting to do some oddball radio stuff, had connections already in New York. It made more sense for me. My father was starting to get sick at the time. I wanted to be able to go home a little bit easier than going to LA. I mean, I could drive to Cleveland in 7 hours if there was an emergency, a lot easier than trying to hop a flight, go cross country. So it just made more sense. And it was that vibe that instead of that, oh, let's go to a party. It was, okay, your idea is either really good. Let me help you make it happen. It's potential. Let me help you make it happen. It sucks. Let's try to spin it into something different instead. And let's make that happen. That's what similar to you in that you can be I had a moment where I had a meeting at 30 Rock with an executive at NBC. We had a coffee downstairs at on the promenade at the Starbucks, started walking back to go grab the bus back to Jersey. And I was walking through Bryant Park, one of my favorite spots in the world. And as I was walking through, there was a little table set up with a little picnic table set up. And they had a little flower and they just had people sitting there talking straight to camera at this little table set up. So I went up and just said, hey, what are you guys doing? They said, well, we're creating a new show based off the idea that people don't sit down and have dinner at the family table every single day anymore. And probably a lot of the problems that we have in the world would be solved if we just sat down and talked to each other again. So we wanted to create this concept in a show. That's a great idea. They're filming the pilot of it. Can we interview you? Yeah, absolutely. We're really getting along. And I said, honestly, this is the type of show I would love to host. And they said, we were thinking about maybe adding a host. We should talk. So we had some conversations, did some other on-camera stuff. They decided to go without the host for creative and budget reasons. Great, no problem. Get it. Happens. Yep. But the fact that I kind of walked into that randomly in Bryant Park after having that meeting, and that could have turned into something, and still connections. I still chat with the producers from that to this day. That's what you get in New York City. Yep. And just those people making that effort and creating that. I love that part of the city.
Yeah. Yeah. The creativity in New York City and the energy, and there's always something going on. And so just like you said, you can walk, like I said, I can walk into any agency, any company and say, I worked on X, Y, and Z brands, are you looking for some help, and get hired. That was the one thing that was the one thing that's very that makes it appealing. That's why everybody goes there, because there's opportunity.
Right. And also you just feel the element of creativity. I still remember my favorite ad of all time. The beauty of New York City, London is the same exact way. It's the one thing that we don't do so much here. Albeit Puerto Rico Twitter is hilarious and fun. But in New York City, you can walk down the street and the ads that put in front of you, they're everywhere, but they're brilliant. They're funny. They're witty. There's something clever about it. I still remember walking, I think it was through the Village, past this boutique real estate company. And I have a photo of it somewhere, I think on my Instagram. And it was the advertisement for this real estate firm was, you don't remember his name, but you remember his apartment. And it was just one of those, you stop, you laugh, and you go, holy crap. And every time I would say that to someone, to a woman that lived in New York City, they would go, yeah, I have one of those. Yep. We all have it. And I saw that right after someone who just moved there went, yeah, I don't, he was an all right guy, but man, his apartment in Long Island City in Queens, the views of the city there, oh my God, it was great. So but that element of creativity, when you're walking down the street and you see that, you feed off of that. That's addicting. It's so good.
Yeah. That also leads to, I don't know if you experienced this or not, but it becomes very easy to all of a sudden go from a 8, 10, 12 hour workday to a 14, 16 hour workday or what have you. And to your point about I lived in the burbs, so we saw it firsthand where parents were in the city until 7, 8 o'clock at night, and they're getting home to basically put their kids in bed. And to your point about if we could just sit down and have a meal together. And that was one of the things, that was what I don't know if that was the Midwest in me, but that was one of the things that I really made a strong focus on after years of chasing, the ring and new business and travel and all those things, was just like, holy shit, like my kid doesn't know how to throw a baseball. I'm not having dinner with my family. Like, this has to change. So I went back and just started setting my own terms and said, look, I'm catching that 6:08 train back to Jersey every day, like it or not. Like, I'll make an exception here and there, but I want to be there for dinner time because I'm missing out so much. So I get it. But like you said, it's almost addictive where you get.
And it becomes part of your personality too.
Yep.
Because I had a conversation with someone in the last year who she's a chef, done TV work and opened restaurants in the city. And she just moved outside of the city. She bought a house in Atlanta where she's originally from and left the city in this middle thing. And our whole conversation was all about that element of how New York defines you. It is part of your identity. The fact that you live here, that you're making it happen, that you're doing awesome things. It's awesome. It's great. You're always working. You're always hustling. You're always building that. And to step away from that is a very scary thing because it is so ingrained in you. It takes a while to completely unwind that New York City element and that part of your brain and the underlying anxiety that comes with it. Mm-hmm. And you have to kind of take that step back and go, okay, there's life outside of the city. Doesn't mean that I can't go back and do other things, but it is so easy to be on that hamster wheel. And I think a lot of people don't leave because they are afraid of leaving that identity. Well, if I leave New York City, I'm almost a failure then, aren't I? Because this is the city, the world revolves around New York. In many ways it does, but it's okay to be able to step back and say, I want to have a life outside of this. I want, like you said, for my kids to be able to play baseball, to be able to see them for dinner at night, to have that element that is so important, which I think a lot of people have learned over the last year. And it'll be interesting over the next year or two, next 5 years to see how we've evolved, how this will re-evolve again as the world starts opening up and companies try bringing people back, and how that dynamic's going to change, but then people's opinions of what they want to do with their lives have changed. So that's going to be really interesting to see how what we know of as New York City for many years, and we see this new rebirth of whatever this next generation is going to be. It'll be amazing in its own way, but it will be interesting to see, do we go back? Do we try to do that pushback, or do we see kind of a balance, or is it going to be completely different?
Yeah. And the anxiety part is so real in that, when I first came to New York City, they handed me a BlackBerry and it had that stupid red flashing light. Yep. And that thing was sitting on the nightstand and it would go from green to red. In my sleep, I would see it and wake up.
Yep.
And so you go through years of conditioning yourself to always check your email, always respond right away, inbox zero, can't have a voicemail, a missed call, missed text, or whatever. It takes time to work out of that. But what I found is that when you step out of that environment, first of all, when you go to work with a company that's like that, you recognize it right away, and you have to set your own boundaries. But just stepping back from it, my anxiety levels are so much lower. Even, it's been 10 years since I worked for somebody else, but that took time. That was not an overnight process to say, like, just the thought of like, I didn't get an email today, our business must be failing. Like, no, like that's not how that works. Your clients are in meetings and this person didn't respond. And especially moving here where people are, to some extent, whether it's an extreme or not, they're on island time where they'll get to it when they get to it. And that's fine too.
Right.
I've mentioned this before, but going to my kid's basketball game here, the game's at 3:00, right after school. And both teams have all their parents there. The grandpas are there. The brothers and sisters are there. It is just a very different. So it's obviously very, very welcoming to see that instead of pushing a game till 7:30 at night, so mom and dad can maybe take the subway home or catch a train or what have you to come watch play. So that to me was the culture shift was obviously very welcome, but very, very different.
And what also happens, I thought I was going to lose my creative edge. And in some ways I feel some of my wittiness has changed since I left. But being in a different environment and leaving that, also then when you're not so wound up, when you're not so stressed out, when you're not on that hamster wheel, it allows creativity in your brain to be able to think differently and see things differently. I was just telling the story to someone not long ago. The last video stuff I did in New York City before I left, I was doing some man on the street stuff for Brick Underground, which is one of the real estate blogs like Curbed and all that. It's Curbed New York. It's one of the smaller ones. But I was doing some fun man on the street video stuff for them. And the last one I did was about dating in New York City and asking people on the street, how far would you go to date someone? And in my head, I kind of had a feeling what everybody would say. And all the stereotypes I had in my head would be right. Some woman that lives in Manhattan will never leave the city. Guys, same as well. It goes for both, but it was very much for the women. It was very obvious I never leave the city for a guy. Oh, would you go to Brooklyn? No, why would I want to do that? People in Staten Island stay in Staten Island. Everybody stays segmented in their own little borough. As someone who lives in Weehawken, New Jersey, no one would ever come see me. Why would I want to go to New Jersey? We'd be standing like at 34th and 8th. And I go, look down 34th Street, look across the river. You can see the street to my apartment. I'm right there. You wouldn't come all the way over there? No, I can't go there. It's on the other side of the river. It's like a 15-minute bus ride away. You've got to be kidding me. But those stereotypes I had in my head of what it would be creatively happened. And I knew that because that's just how the city works. And you create the fun thing for what it was. That's great. But I realized that I was kind of getting bored from that. And when you get out of that environment and you go to a different place, it's a battle of, it's nice being around fellow creatives in New York or LA or London because everybody's in that vibe and that connection and that feel. But you can also get stagnant in the way because you need some new outlying sources to spark that creativity, to spark that different bubble outside of things. In New York City, we're always so focused about, middle America and the Midwest and what's popular there and all. But most of the people that make those decisions don't actually go to middle America. They don't go to the Midwest. They don't really know those people. And I think it's so important to be able to know that audience and know that we're more than just the 8 million people in the city and the 20 million in the whole region of New York. There is something more outside of that. And it's so good to be able to get out of that. And creatively from that has opened me up to some new different ideas and ideas that have worked really, really well. I think that is so important to be able to get out of that bubble. It's important to go back in it and have those connections and get that energy and all that. But there's also so much opportunity outside of it as well.
Yeah, the perspective. It's funny because as I talk to people and I hear their stories or just talking to friends and catching up, the questions I ask them sometimes, they're like, "Whoa, I didn't think about that." I'm like, "Right, because you're in the bubble. That's why. Because you're not I get it. I can still put myself back in there and reintroduce myself into that." But you're never going to have this perspective until you do what I did. And so I totally, and so speaking of perspectives, now when you were in New York City, you started the 30 Rock Tree account. By the way, you're the second parody Twitter account that I've had on. I don't know if you know this or not, but
oh no,
yes, Ian Schaefer, who was the founder of Deep Focus and now runs a company called Kindred, who was a guest a few episodes back. He was Invisible Obama, if you remember Clint Eastwood yelling at the chair. So Matt, you started when you were living in New York City, I presume. You started the 30 Rock Tree at 30 Rock Tree account on Twitter. So tell people about how that came about, because it's fascinating.
So it started when the parody accounts were really a big deal in the early 2010s, when there was the Not Alec Baldwin was one of the big ones during that era. So I was living in Jersey City, New Jersey at the time. Saw a photo of the tree coming in on the flatbed. And this is when all the parody accounts were coming out. And just in my head, I kind of thought, what would a voice like that think? Here's this tree that comes in from a tiny little town that's brought into New York City, made a gigantic star. They deck it out, put trees, light it up. Millions of people watch a TV show about it get lit. Million people every day pre-COVID would come and take a selfie with it. People get engaged. It kind of would get a bit of an ego, but it's also very New York City in that way. From a small little town, and you made a big star. So I thought, what if we took that and had some fun with it? And the character just kind of evolved from that. It started just as a silly thing, just to kind of make some people laugh. In the early days, people would, when they would take photos of the tree, I would search people that were taking those photos, have a search and tweet deck for Rockefeller tree. And the tree would tweet back, and people would start following it back. Like, oh, that's cool. The tree's watching and is tweeting us. And that's how it originally started that way. And then the character kind of evolved. I stopped doing that because it didn't really get that many follows back from people, because it was kind of old. People were searching on Twitter and tweeting people, and people were just kind of getting tired of it. It was part of that evolution of Twitter. And then it kind of became more character-based, and really became character-based over the last couple of years, because I was getting bored with the old way of doing it and didn't want to do it. So I turned it around and made it a little bit more fun for me from that standpoint. So it's evolved over time for sure. And it's one of those things where every year I say, I don't want to do it. But luckily, I find a little bit of a way to be able to do it a little differently. And honestly, it only has 13,500 followers. It gets millions of impressions every Christmas, but the actual numbers itself don't look that big. But there are a lot of people that I get messages from that say, hey, I look forward to this every year. You made me laugh. I had this family thing happen, and you helped make us smile through this whole thing, especially over the last year too. So when I get messages like that, I go, it's not about me, it's about them. And that's what kind of pushes me to continue to do it and try to make it evolve every year. And then also try to use it as an outlet to try some new things creatively, social wise, try to play with the algorithm a little bit. So it's kind of a unique experiment in that way.
So, well, and you're selling yourself short here, right? So let's talk about some of the interactions you've had on here, including with NBC's Al Roker, who appreciates the tree, who talks to the tree, right? So how did that come about? Did you reach out to him? Did he reach out to, was it a random thing? How'd that go down?
So the idea to kind of just give Al grief started early on, because there was one every year when they bring the tree on in, the Today Show will do a big reveal where they bring the truck on in and they show the tree, like, the tree's here, we're going to put it on up. And then they do it to promote the TV show in a couple of weeks. There was one year where they had a jib cam shot from above on 52nd, 53rd, I can't remember which street. And the flatbed would come in, and Al was on the truck, decked out with a Christmas Santa hat, had like Christmas lights on next to the tree, acting like he's best friends. Kind of imagine that dad that's overzealous about Christmas on the Friday after Thanksgiving. He's going up to the attic to get all the Christmas lights, like Clark W. Griswold. It's time, kids. It's Christmas. Just that jolly, fun, overzealous dad. And Al was sitting there like touching the tree, pretending like they're best friends. And in my head, the character voice was just like, don't touch me. Don't touch me. What are you doing? And I realized, there could be some fun with that, because Al is a fun guy like that, especially on Twitter. So the tree, the character just started kind of ripping Al a little bit, but with that. And then eventually every year Al would kind of poke fun with it in one or two tweets. And then 2 years ago, all of a sudden Al fully embraced it and started having fun with it. And the banter back and forth just turned into a bunch of dad tree jokes. And that year also they were doing the third hour of Today. This was after the Megyn Kelly fiasco, and they extended it out and added that hour. So I think they needed content because once a week on a Thursday or Friday, it would be kind of a part of the opening segment, their monologue. What's the tree doing with Al? What tweets are going on? And they would highlight it. And I wouldn't know this because I don't really watch the Today Show every day. Not really the demographic for it, but I'd be sitting here in Puerto Rico, enjoying my coffee, enjoying the view of the ocean in my old apartment. And I get a text, 20 texts going, they're talking about you on the Today Show. Because all my friends would watch and tell me about that. And it just turned into a fun little banter. And we get a ton of press from that articles of Al and the tree get in an argument and it just being fun. So it was a pure, just kind of naturally grew that way. Al and I have DM'd once or twice before. We know, he knows who I am and all. He's been very cordial, very sweet, very kind and supportive. And I've sent him some thank you texts, messages. But that's been about it. There was no plan, nothing like that. I think it was just the perfect timing on that. They needed content, to be completely honest. And, we had some fun with it.
That's awesome. It's fun when things happen organically. I know that we work in a space where, I hate to say it can be contrived and all those things, but it's awesome that he just embraced it and ran with it. And that to me, it's more fun when it's organic. I mean, you and I, we've both written content and, taken a flyer on some jokes that hopefully they land online or what have you. But the organic stuff is so much more fun.
And also, too, to be completely honest, inside of NBC Universal, from people I know that have worked there or still work there, everything is very structured. Everything is very planned. And a lot of times you have to get permission to be able to send a tweet or do whatever. So the fact that, he kind of had fun and embraced it and, just randomly would say, it all started with just him saying on the weather once, the tree. Yeah, we lit the tree. It has a Twitter account. You should follow it. Just that nice little thing that he didn't have to do. And I'm very grateful for it. But the fact that he could embrace it and just had fun with it, especially in a building there where everything is structured and you try to plan it perfectly. And we all, the traditional media models, the bigger brands are trying to really break into the new world, but they try to bring their old mindset into the new world, and it doesn't work that way, and it flops dramatically. Well, you have to kind of have that natural, organic vibe. You have to let that happen that way. You can't take the old model. So the fact that, there are little moments where we can have fun and let it be organic and have fun that way, I'm very grateful that it happened, and very, very thankful for Al for having fun with it.
Well, and I think to your point about, the point about corporate and especially Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, you can post stuff on social, you can post a blog post, you can post whatever. Those are all planned, and most of the time they flop because, like you said, they're using old models to figure out what's actually relevant or what people might like. Yeah. But in Twitter, there's a vibe, and when you're involved in it and you read and you can see the reactions, it's real time, and you either get it or you don't. And that's that's the biggest flaw where most corporations or brands, there are a handful, obviously the Steakums of the world, and they get it. They're in there, they get it. And the fact that they let Al do this without jumping in, I mean, I know people that worked at NBC Universal as well, and the red tape and the bureaucracy and things make things just not fun as it relates to doing anything that remotely resembles a conversation online. So yeah, it's,
the beauty of Twitter is that this is how I explain it to my clients. Twitter is the pulse of humanity at this moment. You open up Twitter, this is what people are talking about. It has evolved in a way where it's not as much fun as it used to be, to be completely honest. Yep. But overall, it's still, if there's something breaking news going on, you go to Twitter. You're seeing what people are saying. You're seeing what people on the ground are talking about. You're seeing the news collection happen in real time. If something funny happened, everybody's talking about it. That vibe you can feel on Twitter. When things are really down over the last 4 years during the Trump era, Twitter really became a hellhole because there was that underlying energy in the United States, and you just felt it. There's a lot of problems with that, but that's the beauty of it, is you can just go on. What's people talking about? What's the vibe? What's the energy? I mean, there's the trending tab, but overall there is definitely an energy and a vibe and flow. And you have to be able to just embrace it in that moment and know how to run with it. And if you want it to be successful, that it's evolved over time, and how you and I both, we could probably look back on our tweets from 10 years ago and we tweet completely differently because it's evolved, but you have to be able to know how to ride those waves when they happen.
Yep, absolutely. And you mentioned Puerto Rico Twitter, which can be like the biggest party in the world or like not that the other direction. And it's the same way. You wake up in the morning, you're like, what are people talking about here? And how, what's the vibe? How do people feel about this? And then as you become more kind of educated about how things work here. And I think that's one thing that for me, that's funny, is that having that outside perspective of, walking into a situation, just reading the room and be like, oh yeah, okay, I get this.
Yeah. Well, and especially with earlier this week, I had a tweet that went viral, and I've had that happen before, especially with the tree. But you don't realize how fast Twitter works until you are on the other side of that. Not only from a notification standpoint, because you have to turn your notifications on Twitter off, period. I don't have them. I haven't had them on in years, because it will, like that red light you're talking about with the BlackBerry, it will drive you nuts. I can't do that. I have to only check it when I allow myself to check it. Yep. But when you're on the other side where it's coming at you at like a wave, when you get on that wave, you have to be prepared for it, because it's not easy. It can be fun, but it can also be very draining if you don't know how to deal with it.
As somebody who had to manage communities online for IoT devices in 2015 and 2016, and having every tech bro in the world screaming at you, I get it.
Yeah.
So in addition to the 30 Rock tree, you also got to do a piece as Prometheus. So those who don't know, if you've ever been to it's in the ice skating rink area, correct? At 30 Rock?
Yeah, it's during the winter, it's an ice skating rink. During the summer, it's an outdoor restaurant in the bottom of the plaza.
Yep. There's a gold statue of Prometheus, and you recently got to do a piece as the voice of Prometheus. Can you tell me more about that one?
Yeah. So the marketing folks at Rockefeller Center, one of their outside companies, reached out to me and said, I got an email through my website that said, hey, Rockefeller Center is thinking about doing a piece. We like to do it based off of possibly Prometheus. We love everything you do with 30 Rock Tree. We'd like to chat with you. Now, understanding my relationship with Rockefeller Center through 30 Rock Tree has always been a love-hate relationship over in the past. It's changed now. But in the beginning, there were a lot of people that did not like what I was doing. And I wasn't told specifically, but it was handed to me through third parties, through people at NBC that are connected with that. And had a run-in with one or two people there too, where they made it obvious that they don't really like what I do. They don't really find it funny, but they let me play because I don't go over the line. And I'm very lucky that they allowed me to be able to have some fun, because every year I would sit and wait for a cease and desist. So when I got the original email, I thought, oh, this is a joke. This can't be real. This must be spam. And then the AE sent me a DM on Instagram, and I went, oh, okay, this is legit. So we had a great conversation. They were interested in working with me. We came up with an idea about writing as Prometheus as the city is opening up again. What did Prometheus see over the last year? And Prometheus, the Titan that it is, his story, he was the biggest supporter of humanity at the time when he was around. He stole fire to help people with light and to make food. He was chained to the mountain for stealing that because he pissed off the Titans and the gods. He was the cheerleader for humanity. So let's take that, him being this statue who's watched New York City change since 1934, since when he was put there. What did he see over the last year? And as New York is starting to open up, what guidance and advice could he give? And that was kind of the basis of the article of it. I had a blast writing it, had a good time with that. As kind of that, hey, welcome back. I've seen things have changed. I've been here for, since, chained here literally since 1930 something. I've seen everything change, but I've also seen how I help create humanity. I help create you. So maybe I can offer you some guidance as the city is opening up. So that's kind of the tone we took with that. And it was a lot of fun to write. And it was a pleasure to, after all these years of kind of a unique, turbulent, not really turbulent, but a unique relationship with Rockefeller Center, for them to say, hey, we like what you do. We like to work with you on this, was a lot of fun. And it was kind of nice to be able to, play with them in that way.
Where can people find that the piece that you wrote?
You can go to rockefellercenter.com/blog is where their blog and web magazine is at. And you'll scroll down, you'll see it. It was just out about 2-3 weeks ago.
Awesome. And you mentioned something I want to talk about a little bit more. So you decided to tweet at the Philadelphia Flyers mascot whose name is Gritty, very popular mascot. I'm sure you've seen him. He's the giant orange monster, googly eyes, the whole 9 yards, known for doing, pretty, I would say, going back to the corporate kind of red tape scheduling tweets and all those things. They kind of intentionally do stuff that's a little more out there because the character is supposed to be, kind of a mockery essentially of mascots. So,
yep.
So you decided to tweet at Gritty. Can you tell folks here who haven't seen it, what was that all about?
Sure. So about a week or two ago, I was sitting on my couch in my apartment, just scrolling through Twitter, wasting time, and see a tweet from him that says, "Now's your chance. I want to make your dreams come true. What would you like to see, to see me do?" And just in passing, I thought I was kind of had someone in mind. Actually, there's someone I have a bit of a crush on who lives in Philadelphia. I've chatted with before, but we're very different. I don't think it would ever work. And she was just on my mind. So I just retweeted it and said, "Hey, call my crush and tell her I screwed up and really like her. Wait, except you can't talk. So you're just going to make it worse anyway. Never mind." Just a fun passing retweet with that, thinking, nothing's going to happen from, I didn't know what they were going to do with that. I figured it was just some silly thing they were doing to just grab some info or whatever.
Well, and
Let's put it out.
And for all the people who probably responded, right? I mean, there's probably thousands and thousands of responses.
At the time when I put it out there, I think I had just a few likes. It had a couple thousand views. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just a fun passing thing of, okay, cool. I got some traction from people in my world that normally like things like it. Okay, cool. That's it. Great. Leave it be. Don't think anything of it. No joke. On Tuesday night, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday night, I'm at a dinner, introduction / business dinner with someone that wants to hire me. And we're having some great stories. We're getting wine drunk, talking about stories about media and entertainment. And in the middle of it, he's being very supportive and saying, "No, don't knock yourself down. You're really, really good. You take a look at when you have things that go really well, use it as an opportunity to really confirm to yourself that what you're doing is working and all." I'm like, "That's really nice. Like, that's great. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back." Okay, no problem. He gets up. I grab my phone and I see that tweet starting to go viral right after he says that to me. And I'm like, what is going on? And I completely forgot about that. I wrote that tweet. It was like a week and a half ago. I just put it away. So what happened was Gritty, they held up some signs. Gritty, they had him standing in the arena. They went through a bunch of those things that people suggested and they had him do it. They said, "We want to see Gritty launch a rocket." So they had like a toy rocket. A woman who's tried for months, if not years, has wanted Gritty to throw a sheet cake at her face. And he finally did. Like just these random weird things. So out of all the thousands they got, I was one of them they picked. And they had him holding up a sign, 4 signs that said, Dear Matt's crush, Matt really likes you. Please give him a chance. I can't vouch for Matt. Personally, I wouldn't trust him. I don't think you should either. I don't know what he did to screw up, but it sounds bad. No more second chances. You should get out while you still can. Love, Gritty. It was funny. It's what Gritty would say. Gritty, you know what? I knocked Gritty. I went after him like, "Oh, you would ruin it anyway." Yep. So he did that. It's the character. It was funny. I got the biggest kick out of it. But not everybody found it funny, though, in any way, shape, or form. I'd say I would say probably, I'm taking a look right now, as of recording this, 3.7 million impressions on that tweet of my original tweet.
Yeah.
Crazy. Awesome. The majority of the messages or likes or whatever were people just going, "Oh, Gritty knocked him down. He's dead. Gritty, what are you doing?" All having fun. It's Gritty. He's a monster. He causes chaos. That's what he does. They get it. Then there is a small sliver of people that thought it was a pure feminist Gritty moment where Gritty was the feminist leader that they were all waiting for of, you know what? I hate when men try to use public figures or public shaming to get women into relationships or love or whatever. Do that all privately. I kind of agree with that. I hate when I see public proposals or things like that, or they had the whole family there with the videographer to propose to her. Do it privately. Give her the opportunity. She might actually not like you and you don't realize it. I actually agree. I think that stuff is stupid, but they all thought, Right. They all thought, oh, here's Gritty knocking down this dude who wanted to publicly shame this woman into going on a date with him or whatever. Screw him. You're creepy, dude. I had one woman call me creepy. One woman, a bunch of weird stuff like that. It was very few, but there were some that took it way too seriously, not even knowing the entire story. And then there was a few people who read that and thought, oh, are you okay? That's coming from a very bad place. You know, if you really want a relationship with her, you should do that inner work and come to it from a better place. This is not the right way. I hope you are okay.
And I remember I remember DMing you and I was like, this is real, right?
Yeah, you were like, I screenshot it and you were like, what?
Yeah, I tweeted out, I'm like, not everything on here is supposed to be serious. It's okay to laugh and have fun. I felt so bad for you getting bombarded.
I mean, I also, to the people that tweeted that, I appreciate the fact that there are some souls that are looking out for people, because I think there are a lot of people that do go and say harsh things on Twitter that genuinely just do need to talk to somebody and look internally. They're projecting their hates. I get that. I appreciate that. But good Lord, it was just a joke. It's Gritty. How can we not laugh about this? So it's just this weird variety. And then I'm being pummeled with notifications and all this stuff. And like I said, I've been on the other side of a viral shit show. I've been there. I've had way worse before. I've had a comedian in New York City once take my profile photos on Facebook and make a GIF out of it. Like, who's this weirdo talking like a tree? Just weird shit. But the fact that to see that happen in real life, those public opinions of what people automatically assume about the story, don't know anything. By the way, that could have been entirely made up. There could have not actually been somebody. I could have just made that whole thing up, You know, just the fact that they automatically assume that I'm in this bad spot and actually want to do that. If the Flyers would have called me and said, hey, can we do that? You know what I would have said? No. Why would I want to put someone through that? Except the fact that she owns a business in Philadelphia and she might go, that's actually some really good publicity. We should probably do that. I might do it at that point. But I wouldn't actually want to put anybody through that. You do all that stuff privately, but they don't know anything about me. They don't know my story. They don't know the whole story there. They just assume what they see on Twitter. And what's funny is that for the most of the Gritty's doing good here with this whole thing, it's just blue checkmark Twitter that see it in passing, retweet it with their comment, and never do a single thing again. They'll never try to find out about me, the story, ask anything. It's just, I put that assumption out to my 250,000 Twitter followers. Usually is that small amount. It's not the big ones. It's not the millions of people. And then they let it pass on by. It is fascinating to just watch that world work in real time. And you just want to yell, people, this is the fucking internet. Not everything you see is real. Seriously, just take a joke.
I've had it happen a few times, and that's where turning off muting conversations is a godsend, because it's just like, and if it's political, forget it, because the trolls are coming out. You get the right-wing radio host who has supposedly 300,000 followers, but yet his rating show has like 4,000 listeners. And you get all the trolls coming at you, and you're like, you know what? There have been a few times where I just start blocking. I'm like, I'm not, you don't get to get popular off my content at this point.
Exactly.
Like you said, like it was a joke, or it was whatever it was. But like
it wasn't even a joke that I wrote on purpose. It was just a passing comment because I kind of missed somebody, but I didn't want. It was like, okay, that'd be just funny because I was thinking about her. That's it. It wasn't. I'm sitting there going, I want Gritty to actually show up at her place of work and put these signs up and confess my love to her. It was nothing like that. It was just a passing comment. But we have to instantly just assume because a white man on Twitter says that this, and we've seen it done by other fellow white men before who are assholes and shouldn't do it. And I agree with you on that, but it doesn't mean that I did it.
Oh, I have to rename this episode to the trials and tribulations of funny white guys on Twitter. No, it can be overwhelming, quite frankly, at times. And for as much fun, I have a lot of fun on Twitter. I know that there are people who get pissed off at me, or they read stuff the wrong way, or what have you. And I'm just there to have fun. I like locally, Ricardo Rossello is running to try to go to Congress to testify as a writing candidate for statehood, and his wife tweeted out a photo of him at a MacBook Pro. Smiling at the camera, she said, "Buenos dias." And so I responded with "Buen dia" with the clip from Superbad, like as if we all forgot that Ricardo got thrown off the fucking island by the people.
Yeah.
And I retweeted, I responded to her saying "Buen dia" with the clip from Superbad with Seth on the soccer field with Evan. And the kid runs up because they're talking and not playing soccer. And the kid gets mad at Evan for not playing soccer. And then Seth says, you pissed your pants. And the kid says, that was like 8 years ago, asshole. And he's like, people don't forget. So I kind of like those things like that. It's funny. It's not like you're actually thinking people are going to vote for you to go to Congress as the governor got thrown off the island. Like that's credible in some way. That's a good idea. So it's always nice to throw a reminder at people and just let them know, like, hey, you're taking yourself a little too seriously. You have no perspective, and you should probably laugh about it. It's not a bad thing to laugh. That's
the sad thing, though.
That's the best part about Twitter is the laughter. If you can make people laugh, then it's worth it. I've had people say to me, like, you made my day with this tweet. It's like, thank you. That's the entire point. Let's all chill out and relax a little bit and have some fun.
It doesn't mean that the world is full of really awful things that happen. And like I said, I agree that there are a lot of things that my fellow men do that are really awful. I've had to do a lot of looking in the mirror as well. And that's a very important conversations to have and all that. But some things just are not meant to spark it in that direction because it was never meant for that. And you just assumed off of something silly and ridiculous. So
I feel crazy. Like if everybody had to watch what they say constantly, nobody would speak. And there's only understanding comes through conversation, through knowledge, through education, through having those talks by someone saying that was offensive. Why was that offensive? I don't know. Well, then I guess you weren't that offended. So I want to do a quick wrap up here with you. We're going to play this or that real quick. I have 5 things.
Yeah.
Rapid fire, and you have to pick one or the other. Are you ready?
Let's do it. All
right. This is going to be a controversial one to start. NBC or BBC?
So I am definitely an Anglophile and someone that probably will more than likely end up moving to the UK at some point in some time. I watch tons of BBC content, and not just the Doctor Who stuff and the stuff that's exported here to the States through BBC Worldwide, but the way the British do television, the wit, the honesty, and the fact that you can pretty much say any word except the C word and show nudity pretty much because they're adults over there and can get things done and not offended because they see that on TV. Yeah, I love my friends at NBC, but I think they would also agree the Brits create some unbelievably brilliant comedy.
All right. Next one. This is another controversial take, especially if you're from Ponce. It's pastelillo or empanadillas?
Empanadas. I know that totally brings out my gringo. I'm well aware I am a gringo and I am learning and all, but to me, I still say empanadas. Because if I try to say it the other way, I just look like a total idiot. Albeit then they laugh, but yeah.
Right. Or Puerto Rican Hot Pocket works too. So I think I know the answer to this one then. So British comedy or U.S. comedy? I'll answer it for you. British comedy.
You know what? It's both have its purpose. I see American comedy and why it works and how it is. But for me in my brain, and I can watch American comedy and I don't laugh. I go, oh, that's funny. I can see why it's funny. I analyze it. But British comedy genuinely makes me laugh out loud.
All right. Rum or tequila?
Oh, rum, for sure. Has to be rum.
Do you have a favorite rum?
I'm a mix either between Don Q or Barlito, depending on, if it's cigar, I'm doing Barlito, but I do love a good mixed drink with Don Q.
Mm-hmm. Last one. This is Puerto Rico specific, East Side or West Side?
Oh, that's actually kind of tough because I live on the East Side. But I also see the beauty and the potential for the West Side from lifestyle. I think long-term, I think I'll end up over there. What's funny is most of my friends that lived in Old San Juan left Old San Juan and went to the West Side after I moved to Old San Juan. Must have been something I said. But from lifestyle standpoint, it's just beautiful. The water is so much nicer over there. It's calmer. It's quieter. It's definitely a different vibe. San Juan is great for what it is, but San Juan, even though it's not really a big city per se. It's a big, small city. But when you want a true, quiet, authentic, peaceful mindset, West Side for sure. Absolutely.
Awesome. Matt, this was fantastic. Thank you for joining me today. You can follow Matt on Twitter. Again, he's at Matt Haze, Haze. His website is matthaze.com if you're looking for podcasting, creative ideas, etc. And of course, you're going to want to follow 30 Rock Tree at 30 Rock Tree. Matt, thank you so much for coming on.
David, this was fun. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you again for listening. If you're not following me on Twitter, please give me a follow. I'm at D Binkowski. The show has its own Twitter account as well at TDBP Official. And if you are on Apple Podcasts, make sure you please rate us and leave us a 5-star review. We'll see you next episode.